Well, it is a sad day, and we are going to focus a little bit on that because it's got political implications. People say, well, what's it got to do with New Zealand? The death of Charlie Kirk, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and many people have heard about that. Seems to be one of the main stories today on the media. And look, today we are going to just allow you to have your comments as well. So if you'd like to make a comment about the whole Charlie Kirk issue and political discourse and free speech and just all the implications of what we've seen today, then come onto Facebook, the Family First account on Facebook or on YouTube, and then it'll come through to our computer right here. But of course, you may be watching elsewhere on X, on Instagram, on Substack. We're live streaming to a whole lot of places, so that's okay. But if you'd like us to see your comment, come onto YouTube Family First or come onto the Facebook Family First page as well. Simon, just, total devastation, I'd say. I think for many of us, we were really shocked. We heard the news that Charlie Kirk had been shot in Utah at a university gig where he was outside. He was sort of taking questions and answers, discussing with people. And then, of course, the news came through that he had died from the injuries. Where were you when you first heard this, and how did you feel when you heard this news?
I was actually just waking up, and as is my habit, I grabbed my iPad just to review the news, and I was actually doing solid ground this morning, Bob. So probably like yourself with Daybreak, I just always do a quick, wake up earlier and do a quick review. And I was struck nothing on the Herald or Stuff, which at one level is not a complete surprise, but when I got to the BBC, it was like, oh dear. And, obviously at that time, the footage, not through the BBC, but was available elsewhere. So just absolutely tragic. So yeah, it was early morning here for me.
Yeah. And of course, then a lot of the videos started to go around. There was this beautiful one of when Charlie was recently on TV and his little girl comes running up to him and says daddy and stuff. Just lots of these family photos. A recent post of his: get married, have kids, stop partying into oblivion, leave a legacy, be courageous, happy Sunday, God bless all the parents out there. There was a lot of really positive statements like that. Were you into Charlie Kirk? I mean, did you watch a lot of his material and read a lot of his material?
Short answer is no, not a lot. Was I aware of him? Yes, because probably like a lot of people, particularly if you're in the more conservative space, the things like Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn will serve up similar content. So a lot of his short videos and stuff popped up onto my feed, but I wasn't someone who was following him religiously. But I just thought he had a lot of, actually I was going to say he has a lot of good things to say. There are odd things I didn't like, but at the end of the day, he was actually just talking mainstream conservative and Christian values. And that's one of the first things to point out, Bob, of course, is he's been already vilified, obviously in months and years prior, but even today has been some sort of far-right activist, which is appalling.
Well, I mean, some of the media coverage has been shocking. I did have a go at the Herald because they posted this today. Right-wing force and a close Donald Trump ally dies. He died at 31. It's almost like he died of natural causes. Not, did they realize that JFK was assassinated? It's kind of like the media are still keeping up, or is that just the kind of bias? Actually, just before you comment on that, Simon, I was listening to News Talk ZB this morning, and this is how they described Charlie Kirk.
But he's the founder of Turning Point. Turning Point goes back to 2012. He's part of the disinformation campaign on Biden, on COVID. He's one of those guys, but he is close with, the Trumps.
He's close with the Trumps, and he's the disinformation king, apparently. It was pretty galling to watch some of the media coverage, wasn't it?
It is. And excuse me, this is the bias that you and I talk about a lot. And, I think viewers probably know this already, but they really have to take it home. And the tragedy of today's assassination emphasizes it, is the media will choose how to curate the news to you. Rest assured, had this been a 31-year-old left-wing activist, you would be having wall-to-wall coverage. There would be no doubt that it was an assassination. So taking that New York Times headline, published also in the New Zealand Herald, completely deliberate and downplaying. The man did not die. He didn't choke on a meatball or, had a heart attack. He was shot through the neck.
Yeah.
So they're making a deliberate choice there to just fudge what's going on. And Hoskins' comments, along with a whole lot of others, are implicitly saying it's okay because he's right wing, because he's Christian, because he's a white male, because he's conservative. He deserves it. And that's one of the shocking elements. And this is why it still applies to New Zealand, because similar things are said here in the dialogue, or if you can even call it that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I do want to come to that. And apologies for looking down a little bit, Simon. I am listening. I can do two things at one time, although my wife doesn't believe that, because I'm just monitoring the comments, and I do want to share some of these comments. A lot of people paying tribute, and so we will share those. But you just did comment on the media, and some of the mainstream media in the United States were just shocking. I mean, one basically said because he was on the front line of the culture war and it was controversial, well, they thought his views were controversial. That was the problem. This is what CNN said.
David, dovetailing off Brian's point about Kirk being something like a modern day Rush Limbaugh, he is not without controversy. He's taken a lot of controversial positions when it comes to the culture war. It's part of his brand.
Yeah, so that's CNN's interpretation. Probably the worst was MSNBC, which is just a complete trash news media outlet. And this was the response. Basically, it was Charlie Kirk had it coming.
But following up what was just said, he's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions.
Yeah, so there was a number of examples like that. Unfortunately, the media haven't helped the situation by constantly referring to or repeating comments made by unhinged comments about Trump being Hitler and all those negative type of statements. So I guess we shouldn't be surprised, should we?
I think you're being very generous, actually, the mainstream media. I think they are complicit and they are accessories. Just those two sets of comments are appalling and are fueling what happened here. They're complicit in this. And for at least two reasons from what you've shared. He's not controversial. They call him that. Believing that marriage is between a man and a woman, believing in the rights of the unborn child, and being proud of one's Christian faith. I mean, you can run around with Islamic flags and that's fine. He was proud of being Christian. That's controversial, supposedly. And then the second guy is completely fueling this, that, he says what we deem hateful and therefore we should kill him. That is very much the progressive and far left mindset. It's not that your ideas are wrong, it's that you are dangerous and so we'll kill you. It's as simple as that. And you've seen, you're not going to share them, but on social media, these unhinged lunatics celebrating this guy's death, including here in New Zealand. By the way, some of these people will be marching across the bridge on Saturday for their pro-Hamas rally. It's quite sickening, and why this relates to New Zealand, Bob. We have these same unhinged people in media, academia, and politics as well. Tragic.
Yeah. Let's just have a look. The comments have been piling in, as you can imagine already. Let's kick it off. Susie says, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. Nancy Margaret says, a sad day indeed. Jesus King says, New Zealand Herald published some gutter journalism about Charlie today, disgusting. I mean, there was lots of, I saw one article in the New Zealand Herald talking about the hard right. So we've gone from the right to the far right to now the hard right. I mean, they could never define what they're talking about. Dee Dee says, this may be the shot that was heard all around the world. There certainly has, that's interesting comment by Dee Dee there. And I mean, he's getting at the point that there has been worldwide attention on this. And I think it's kind of like people are looking at democracy and civil discourse in the United States and just saying, wow, the culture's in a really dark place. And that would be a fair statement, wouldn't it?
It would be. I mean, I wrote a Substack earlier today where I talked about the continuum of violence. I'm not trying to conflate words with physicality, so physical violence versus insulting someone. But the continuum of violence sort of starts with that deep platforming, cancel culture, then into protest and harassment, and then right, obviously, at the Charlie Kirk end now, where they shoot people. And we are seeing from the progressives at different stages in different countries are on that continuum here. And so in New Zealand, just to link it back so people really understand what happened there is tragic. We haven't fortunately had assassinations here in New Zealand yet, but we had the violence against women with Posey Parker, the violence directed towards the Inflection Point conference. A number of us, myself included, have been deplatformed from speaking at universities. The media, as you say, being hard right is one thing. Being for marriage in the traditional sense is not. And that's the media playing it. Yeah, great. That's, here in New Zealand, the constant threats of violence, and then what they call the lawfare. We have the conversion therapy bill or law in this country, so you can't talk about gender. We have a law commission now who wants to criminalize anyone who believes in biological reality. So we're well on that continuum. And so it's good to talk about it and to expose it more.
Okay, just a few more. Where did I get up to? Jacqueline says, so sad, a man of God. Philippa says, we've lost a wonderful advocate of free speech, speaking the truth. He spoke hope into the lives of young people. Robert says the left media is sickening. Jenny says he will have people he has influenced take up the mantle. And yeah, totally agree with that. Peter says he was close with a democratically elected president. The problem, Peter, is that it wasn't the president that the left culture like. Mike says, a tragedy, but we could approach this with forgiveness because we have been forgiven. That's true. DD says, so conservative patriotic views are divisive. Well, that's what they say. Eros says, the bias of the mainstream media and the dismissive and hateful attitude towards Charlie Kirk has been wild to experience today. It's been crazy. And I think that is true. I mean, if you go on to, what's that radical platform that I'm on just to wind up the left? But Blue Sky, thank you. Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff on there has just been absolutely disgraceful. Peter rightly says that Trump has US flags at half-mast until Sunday for Charlie. There's certainly been a lot of respect shown. Sue, our board member, says, a very sad day. We always loved Charlie Kirk's commentary, but he was the hero for our young people, conservative and Christian, and Charlie was a man that stiffened their spines. A huge loss. I'm mad and sad. Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it. Glenn says, we don't hate the mainstream media enough, ? And Catherine rightly reminds us to pray for his wife and children, and very young children as well. Asana says he was gracious and man enough to have these conversations in person about hot-button issues to demonstrate our common humanity. And I think that was the interesting thing, that he wasn't going out abusing people and putting people down. He just showed up and says, let's debate the issue. And for that, he lost his life. And that's the tragedy in all of this, isn't it?
Ultimately, Bob, they couldn't debate and win against Charlie Kirk, and so they killed him. It's as simple as that. Again, I think you're right. Like Sue talks about being mad and sad. I think people are genuinely allowed and should be actually very angry and very sad. But importantly, too, we need to remain like Charlie and others in this space are as calm, rational animals. And so you harness that frustration. How do we now, here in New Zealand, UK, and elsewhere, move on to actually, constructively change society? Because if it continues down this path, the people who are killing Charlie Kirk, the people who like the cancel culture, who like to protest with Islamic death cults, they're going to just keep going until we stop them.
Yep. Delwyn says, I believe that the name of the organisation Charlie started, Turning Point, will take on a special meaning. Watched Charlie's videos for the last couple of years. Never once saw him say anything hateful, despite the hate that he received. I was just about to quote Family First, but that's Ken, I can tell, is monitoring our social media. So good on you. Thank you, Ken. And Simply Green said, good faith debate died with Charlie as a refrain I've been seeing. Oh, and Grant says that MSNBC anchor that I just showed you, he lost his job today because of what he said. So there is some
That's good.
Justice in the media. I guess there was just such an outpouring towards what he had said. But I mean, the media coverage was disturbing, but just these beautiful images of a family man, I think, has been, really important. And Charlie himself said that, what was it? I saw a post where recently he said, God, family ministry, I think it was, in that order or something like that. And he sort of, get married, have kids, and stop partying into oblivion. You've got to love that. The problem is, Simon, is that this is not the first time. And I mean, we saw this horrific act with, Donald Trump's assassination. He's speaking away, and next minute a bullet rings out, and just shocking.
Killed someone else, of course.
Yeah. So, are we surprised that this is happening in the United States?
Sorry, your sound's just dropping down.
You got me now? There we go. I'm back.
Okay, very low, but I can hear you. No, I mean, look, the States, unfortunately, is rife with this, but again, a lot of people who justify it. So remember, after both assassination attempts on Trump, your MSNBC, CNN, and many others basically said, well, they had it coming. The healthcare executive, Bob, in New York, gunned down by, was it Mangione? Again, celebrated by progressives. They celebrated
not only celebrated, they started fundraisers for them and started raising money. In fact, I saw earlier this week you were talking about the Ukrainian refugee, the 23-year-old woman who was just stabbed by someone who didn't even know her on a subway train, and immediately there was a GoFundMe to raise money for the offender. So that sort of shows just how very confused the culture is, isn't it?
Well, I think it's warped. I think last week I wrote around the killing, the biological male, the trans woman who killed worshippers, 2 young children at a Catholic church in Minneapolis. Within minutes, really, people were turning the victims around. All of a sudden, the victim was the shooter. And so that's what they've done in a number of occasions. And the other thing I think it's important to point out, and again, I touched on this in my Substack, is that they often try in the media to create equivalence. We better be clear at this moment, Bob, we don't know who the shooter is.
Yeah.
They haven't caught that person. But in general, you can see it's clearly a reaction against Kirk's conservatism.
Yeah.
But what the media tries to put out is that progressive and left-wing violence is pretty much the same as right-wing violence, which is demonstrably false. But the media gives you this, because I've just noticed before we came on the show, they're reporting about the killing years ago of Jo Cox, or was she shot in the head and survived?
That's the British politician, isn't it?
Yeah. So they always talk about her, and that's terrible, what happened to her. But they never talk about Sir David Amess, who was killed by an Islamic lunatic. He just gets forgotten. And it's similar in the States. There was a Democrat who was shot, and I apologize, I've forgotten. I don't know if it was a he or she, but I remember a Democrat lawmaker was shot. Absolutely terrible. They talk about it all the time. They conveniently forget about 6 months earlier, a Republican, I think, senator was shot while watching a baseball game. So it's selective media as well. So not only, the appalling stuff that you've shared from CNN and others, but also they're very selective. Charlie Kirk's been killed. Let's go and find a couple of left-wing examples of victims and then try to conflate it all, when actually what we have is a rising tide of far left-inspired violence, and society has to grapple with that.
Yep. I want to just bring this closer to home, but just a couple of other quick ones. Muddy Waters says Charlie Kirk is a martyr. Rest in peace. May the Lord take care of his family during this difficult time. Delvin says, I remember when Keith Green's death had an impact on our generation. May Charlie be a seed planted for God's kingdom in this generation. And Simply Green says there's some compelling evidence that it was a professional job. More information to come. I think we'll probably find out about that. Look, I just want to bring it closer to home, Simon, and my concern is that the kind of violent rhetoric in politics has seeped its way into New Zealand as well. And unfortunately, I have to point the finger at a particular party. You've got Te Pāti Māori co-leaders saying that the government wants to exterminate Māori. You had this post where, what's his name, Rauri Waititi said that he wanted to give Seymour an F in hiding, and that, that's what he was doing, as he was thinking about as he was mowing the lawns. We also had this nationwide activation against the Treaty Principles Bill. I mean, that's not exactly peace-loving imagery there. And of course, then you also referred to the response to Posey Parker and the, peace-loving people who physically, I mean, if she wasn't being protected there, I wonder whether she would still be alive. I mean, they don't exactly seem to be loving. And then, of course, there was this shocking example, which I posted today, just to remind people of One News, the breakfast show, when a couple of years ago they did this.
This is great. Okay, Donald Trump's here, so let's say Donald Trump.
It doesn't hurt.
Put him down there.
Or
Does it have like a laser?
I'm not sure it's actually that far.
I feel like there needs to be a laser on this thing. Or do you,
Well,
okay.
this is.
Oh! Hey!
Charming. So I guess the question is, Simon, have you seen evidence of this kind of violence rhetoric seeping into New Zealand, and what effect is it having? I mean, I think it's quite divisive and quite concerning.
Well, it is, and it's primarily from the left, mostly from the left. It's not to say there isn't some from the very far right. You have radicals in all politics or the fringes, but most of this, the majority, is coming from the left. And you use some really good examples there. I mean, ultimately, well, even recently, sorry, my mind jumps back. You had that Māori MP terribly racist comments while talking about the treaty and partnership, is basically saying, but we don't want any ethnic people in this country except Maori. I mean, you couldn't get more divisive and racist. You've got the Green Party running around calling for intifada and the elimination of the Jewish people. What more evidence do people want? And it's that, again, continuum of violence that I referenced earlier. And so we're just trucking away in that regard. And it should worry people because at the end of the day, no matter what you thought of this guy's views, Charlie's views, he was a young man, a husband and a father to 2 kids, and they killed him. And so that is the level of where things are. And that's why, again, it's a continuum, Bob, because actually, being deplatformed's not killing, of course, but again, it's trying to silence you. And ultimately, and others have made this point, those on the far left want to completely dismantle the systems that we have in society. And if it is done by basically anarchy, by destroying relationships, they'll do it. They want to burn the whole place down and hope that they can rebuild their utopia.
Okay. Peter Lloyd says, defund mainstream media and problem solved. Look, I just think all media should be commercially based. Radio New Zealand, One News, they are left to survive on a commercial basis, and if they can't, so be it, and new media will rise up. I think that's probably the best. Lots of new people online today, which is really nice to get your comments through. Bailey, who says the left is losing. They know it. This is the result because they can't debate common sense or anything that goes against their shallow entitlement. Kevin, I think, is referring to the death threats here, says, yes, Bob, but Helen and Jacinda had death threats as well. I just want to touch on that, Simon, because you got your share of death threats, didn't you? But it wasn't front page news.
No, because again, it doesn't suit the narrative. We've talked about it on here before. So your Jacindas and your Chloe Srawbucks and others go running to the media when someone looks at them wrong, and the media quite happily runs it.
Oh no, but when I got a death threat, I went running to the media, but they ignored me, Simon. So that's the difference. We got a death threat during the cannabis referendum. Registered it with the police, but there was no comment. So media weren't interested. Too conservative.
Yeah, the last big one for me was death and rape threats during the conversion therapy, and you. Be honest, I didn't go running to the police. It's not my nature.
Was that from the Diversity and Inclusion Brigade?
Oh, of course it was. The loving, kind, tolerant, open groups. So, it is what it is. But I think the big thing is death threats to any person or group is wrong. That's the first thing to say. But the second is, again, media curate the news. Death threats to someone like you and me, they don't care, even if we didn't talk about it. But it's someone like the Greens, it suits the narrative because they trade on victimhood. The more they talk about themselves as victims, the less they have to talk about their policies.
Mike says, can't believe people are celebrating his death and mocking people's prayers. Interesting that Mike just refers to that, because remember with the shooting at the Catholic school, you know, people immediately responded with our thoughts and prayers with the families implicated. And of course, then they were mocked and said, you know, keep your prayers to yourself, basically. Those same people are actually saying, you know, they're trying to be nice and say, actually, yeah, you can pray. So apparently prayer is back in. It's sort of when it suits them, which I thought was interesting to watch. Ginny Rose says media seems to be a genuine problem with their bias. Simply Green says, oh no, I already did that one, didn't I? Yeah, okay. Did I get them all? Yeah, Simply Green says, I've had death threats and I'm a nobody. I don't get multiple news reports. And Sana said, not forgetting that I've had death threats. Yeah, Rusty says the right is slow to anger, but definitive when the gloves come off. I mean, what would you say to the statement that it seems to be only the left that demonstrate this sort of violent discourse and it doesn't come from the right? That wouldn't be completely true, would it? Because we do see far-right groups who demonstrate a level of violence as well, like the Nazi groups in Australia that were protesting. So it does come from both sides, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, it comes from both sides, and we touched on that earlier. It's not literally black and white, all left-wing, no right-wing. It is both, but to say it's the same is wrong. Or rather the level and the frequency. It is quite disproportionate. If you just think about America in the last few months, the protests against ICE, the BLM riots, the place of Antifa, the intimidation of women's groups, the intimidation of pro-lifers. This is not happening by far-right groups. This is the far left and the progressive left. So, yeah, it's not really, to stress it to people, one side of the political spectrum is not holding all the holy cards and the other with their little devil trident. It's not that. It's just completely disproportionate. The amount of violence coming from the left is terrible. And yet they're the ones who are always accusing others of what they themselves are doing.
And interesting case just this week or last week, all that tagging and graffiti and vandalism of Christopher Luxon's office. They found the perpetrator, and it was a pro-Palestinian lawyer in Auckland, a barrister, which
Hannah Swinland, her name is.
It's pretty disturbing when you get to that extent where you go around and vandalise politicians' buildings. I mean, because you know what the next step is in terms of those actions, eh?
Yeah, well, I referenced her again in the Substack today because I'm sorry I keep repeating it, but people, I think, need to understand that there is a continuum of violence, and we've seen the extreme end with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But the same moral certainty which drove that killer is the same moral certainty that Hannah Swinland and others have, that, you know, they're above the law and it's perfectly okay to go and deface not just Luxon's office, but multiple political offices over multiple nights. It's that same moral arrogance that you see in the likes of the Greens and Te Pāti Māori, that they think the law and the rules don't apply to them. It's the same arrogance which leads people to be painting, you know, red Hamas triangles on Jewish facilities and so forth to deface war memorials, so sure of themselves that they are above the law. And ultimately, Bob, worryingly, they believe that the end justifies the means. And it's, again, why you end up with a tragedy, which is someone like Charlie's death today.
Yeah. Lisa says this is what comes of seeing words as violence. They respond with actual violence. And I think that's the key point, isn't it? That when people talk violent, there's a very fine line between when people take it to the physical extreme. I did just while you were talking, I did just download this video that I wanted to play of Charlie in an interview, which I thought summed up his life.
How do you want to be remembered?
I mean, if I die?
Hang on, I haven't
Everything just goes away. How would you, if you could be associated with one thing,
did that come
how would you
through?
want to be remembered?
No.
I want to be remembered.
Okay,
for,
hang on.
for
Technical
courage for
issues.
my
I'll
faith.
come back to that one when I find
that
it.
would be the most important thing. Most important thing.
Can you hear that, son?
Yeah, we can see it. It's on the screen.
Could you hear that? What he was saying? I'll just play it again.
I could hear it.
Oh,
Yeah, I can
okay.
hear it.
Let me play it one more time for me because I'm deaf.
How do you want to be remembered?
I mean, if I die?
Everything just goes away. How would you, if you could be associated with one thing, how would you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered for courage for my faith. That would be the most important thing. The most important thing is my faith in my life.
Mm. Well done, good and faithful servant is all I can say. He's been an amazing example, and he has paid the price. And we really encourage people to pray for him. And just before we leave this topic, Simon, how do we prevent New Zealand going down this same track?
It's a difficult one, actually. It's a great question, but it's a difficult one. It really is respectful conversations. And so I suppose it behoves, those of us tuning in here, and as much as yourself and myself, Bob, as we keep having respectful conversations. But I think more of society needs to call out the poor and bad behavior to actually expect better. So everything from, I'm not trying to pick on these particular individuals, but it just illustrates the point. But, the Parliament, the Speaker of the Parliament needs to establish more order. Our police need to actually step in, as they failed to do with Posey Parker, and also to stop a lot of these rather violent-oriented protests that we have here in New Zealand. And in general, people just need to start speaking up. If they're at the pub on a Friday night and someone's, not saying they're completely drunk, don't argue with them, but someone's slagging off at these, evil right-wingers, call them out and say, actually, no, we shouldn't be demonizing people like this. And probably to circle back to where we started, each and every one of us needs to be, and myself included, checking the language that we use. We need to critique what people are saying and thinking, but we shouldn't be demonizing them. So to the extent that any of us are doing that, we need to pull back.
Okay, I just did load this other video. I'm not sure if it's going to work, and hopefully you can hear it. But once again, it was a really good comment that he made as well. I really just want to pay tribute to him just for some of the statements he made, knowing the cost that he has ultimately paid for these statements. Gordon, you might just have to give me fallback on this so I can hear it, but this is what he said.
I go around universities and have challenging conversations, and because that's what is so important to our country, is to find our disagreements respectfully, because when people stop talking, that's when violence happens.
I've never seen someone do this.
Well, it's a growing trend because people like me are facing violence, assaults, the left. Yes, the campus Antifa. I've been stormed out of restaurants. I've been assaulted publicly, multiple death threats.
Okay, so what's your goal in all this?
There's more people that agree with me than some people would actually believe, and they come out of the woodwork when I do stuff like this. We record all of it so that we put on the internet so people can see these ideas collide. When people stop talking, that's when you get violence. That's when civil war happens, because you start to think the other side is so evil and they lose their humanity.
Yeah, great statement, isn't it? The civil discourse is so important, and yet it seems like the other side just want to throw negative statements, call us phobes, don't want to actually debate the issues, and that's part of the problem, isn't it?
Well, they're drawing from Marxism, which is ultimately all about power, and they just want power. And they'll do anything to get it. And if it means they have to deplatform you or kill you, they'll do it, because it is all about power. And as Charlie's noting there, a number of us have. The Free Speech Union in New Zealand, along with you and I and others, are saying, look, conversations are important for exactly the reason Charlie points out. It prevents violence. It's the antithesis of what the left will tell you, which is don't talk, don't bring up ideas that we don't like because it harms our feelings and we feel that we're under attack. Well, actually, if we don't talk about these things, if we don't discuss the gnarly issues, then it will be resolved by violence in one shape or form or another. And again, for a lot of Marxists, they welcome that because life is about power. That's all they believe in, and they want it. So again, people need to be aware of this, not just what is happening right here and now in a contemporaneous way, but actually the philosophical, political, and cultural underpinnings of this. This is not random. This is all quite deliberate.
Yeah. Okay, just a couple of more comments and then we are going to move on. Ginny Rose says, the courageous conversations and the currency of connection. I like the alliteration there. That's a very great statement. And Calandra says, rest in peace, brother in Christ. Erin says, Greg Gutfeld, who's a commentator on Fox News, said this is going to radicalise Republicans. Well, I hope radicalise just means that it gives them backbone and makes them want to speak up more and not sit behind and watch others do it. If that's what you mean by radicalise, that's good. If it means violence or extremism, that will be a negative. Abby says he will be remembered for his courageous faith. And Faftai says, blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. I think I know who said that. Faftai, very apt to have that those words. And Paul says, new phrase, WWCD. What would Charlie do? I'm sure he was the first to say that he wasn't perfect and he fell short just as much. Maybe that's why he said that God came first, family came second, and then his ministry.